What is your definition of life? What do you understand as life?
Hmm. Entities of sufficiently high complexity that are full of surprises. Maybe I don't know. I don't have a free will, so that just came out of my mouth. I'm not sure that even makes sense. There's certain characteristics. So complexity seems to be a necessary property of life, and I almost want to say it has ability to do something unexpected. Um,
It seems to me that life is the main source of complexity on Earth.
yes.
And complexity is basically a bridgehead that order builds into chaos by modeling, by processing information in such a way that you can perform reactions that would not be possible for dump systems. And this means that you can harvest like entropy that dump systems cannot harvest. And this is what complexity is mostly about. Right?
Yeah.
In some sense, the purpose of life is to create complexity.
Yeah. Increasing. I mean, there seems to be some kind of universal drive towards increasing pockets of complexity. I don't know what that is. That seems to be like a fundamental. I don't know if it's a property of the universe or it's just a consequence of the way the universe works. But there seems to be this small pockets of emergent complexity that builds on top of each other and starts having like greater and greater complexity by having like a hierarchy of complexity, like little organisms building up a little society that then operates almost as an individual organism itself. And all of a sudden you have Germany and Merkel.
But that's not obvious to me. Everything that goes up has to come down at some point, right? So if you see this big exponential curve somewhere, it's usually the beginning of an S curve, where something eventually reaches saturation, and the S curve is the beginning of some kind of bump that goes down again. And there is just this thing that when you are inside of an evolution of life, you are on top of a puddle of negentropy that is being sucked dry by life. And during that happening, you see an increase in complexity. Because life forms are competing with each other to get more and more and finer and finer corner of that, like entropy extraction.
See, but that I feel like that's a gradual, beautiful process. Like that's almost, follows a process akin to evolution, and the way it comes down is not the same way it came up. The way it comes down is usually harshly and quickly. So usually there's some kind of catastrophic event.
Well, the Roman Empire took a long time.
But that's would you classify that as a decrease in complexity though?
Yes. I think that this size of the cities that could be fed has decreased dramatically. And you could see that the quality of the art decreased, and it did so gradually. And maybe future generations, when they look at the history of the United States in the 21st century, will also talk about the gradual decline, not something that suddenly happens.
Do you have a sense of where we are? Are we on the exponential rise? Are we at the peak? Or are we at the downslope of the United States empire?
It's very hard to say from a single human perspective, but it seems to me that we are probably at the peak.
I think that's probably the definition of like optimism and cynicism. So my nature of optimism is I think we're on the rise. But I think this is just all a matter of perspective. Nobody knows, but I do think that erring on the side of optimism, like you need a sufficient number, you need a minimum number of optimists in order to make that up thing actually work. And so I tend to be on the side of the optimists.
I think that we are basically a species of grasshoppers that have turned into locusts. And when you are in that locust mode, you see an amazing rise of population numbers and of the local complexity of the interactions between the individuals. But it's ultimately the question is it sustainable?
See, I think we're a bunch of lions and tigers that have become domesticated cats, to use a different metaphor. And so I'm not exactly sure we're so destructive. We're just softer and nicer and lazier. But
I think we are monkeys. We're not the cats. And if you look at the monkeys, they are very busy.
The ones that have a lot of sex, those monkeys.
Not just the bonobos. I think that all the monkeys are basically a discontent species that always needs to meddle.
Well, the gorillas seem to have a little bit more of a structure, but it's a different part of the tree.